Hello and welcome. I am Connor Flower, and welcome to another joyous episode of Apocalypse Duds. Today we have in the studio someone who I was going to introduce in the style of The Godfather, but I thought that would be racist and perhaps would understate even the influence of this person on me in particular as concerns this whole clothing scene. I would like to introduce Giuseppe Timore. Joe, thanks for coming. Joe of An Affordable Wardrobe blog spot, and now on the Instagram platform as well.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're big fans, and Connor and myself have both followed you for a very long time. So
since RSS feed, I'm talking about. Since RSS feed, I would read that shit. I'd read that shit in my music 217 class, history of rock and roll. It was so fucking boring, and I was like, yeah, going through every single post. So it's really good to have you finally in our crosshairs.
Yeah. How's your day going this Wednesday?
So far, so good. It's usually my day off on Wednesdays, but this is the first one in a few weeks that I've actually had the day off to just kind of hang out.
Nice.
So that you decided to waste your time with us. Very nice. Thank you.
Yeah. So just to get started, Joe, where are you from, and where are you now?
So I am from Somerville, Massachusetts, which is just outside of Boston.
Somerville's great.
And not only am I there now, but this house is the place where I grew up. So,
oh, that's right, dude. That's so wild.
Yeah, been here the whole time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, my kids are now fourth generation of my family in the same place. So,
man, that's super cool.
Do you have hash marks on the wall, height hash marks?
Oh, the place is a mess. Every single thing that's happened here in the last 60 years is in the wall somewhere. So.
But that is miraculous, I think. That's really, I don't know, I guess sort of, is it sort of a double-edged sword? Or bittersweet or something?
But the good outweighs the bad, you know. We're kind of old school that way. It's an old 2-apartment house. And my parents live in the other apartment, which... Mm-hmm. The apartment I live in was where my grandparents lived when I was a kid. So,
wow,
old school Italian. We just stay here, all of us together. So.
Yeah,
I mean, I've spent a good bit of time in Boston and surrounding, small suburbs. Somerville's cool, mm-hmm. Alston, etc. And it's such a unique place because that shit happens, and the housing was kind of built that way, and I don't know if I've seen that elsewhere.
Yeah, there's less and less of it these days, but
because it's not about buying, right?
Yeah.
If you're reusing the dwelling, you're not buying a new one.
Yeah, and the craziest thing about it is that when my mother was a teenager in the 60s, my grandmother bought this house literally for cash. Like a suitcase full of money that she had just saved up over time.
That's great.
And then went to the bank and was like, "Here's $22,000," and bought this house. So.
Incredible. Yeah. I saw a meme yesterday that was if you could go back to 2001, look at the housing market, what would you do? And the answer was buy a house for my lunch money.
Buy all the houses. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No shit.
Yeah, they bought my girlfriend's house for $40,000.
Yeah,
and it's like a house. It's like a nice house.
Yeah, for real. So
in 92 or whatever.
How long have you been into clothing? Is this something you've been into, since you were a kid, or?
Ever since I was a kid. And I don't really know where it came from, but I can remember I used to watch a lot of old movies when I was a kid, like old black and white movies.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Stuff like that. My one grandfather was a tailor, And
Ooh.
See,
yeah,
that's crazy.
and my grandmother on the other side, she actually used to work in a clothing factory a million years ago when she worked. And I remember when she, this was well before I was like, when I was a kid or whatever. When she retired, they gave her her sewing machine from the factory that she worked in.
Oh, that's
So
incredible.
yeah, so when I was
Wow.
growing up down in the basement, she had one of those like professional grade singer machines built into the table that had like the big rack on top for all the spools of thread and like the yardstick painted right on the front and everything. Um, and she would like, when we were kids, like we'd buy pants for our school uniforms and she'd hem them if they were too long. And she'd like
Right.
crochet us sweaters and all this kind of stuff. So I was, I guess, always kind of a little bit around it or this kind of like appreciation for it in that way.
Yeah.
Um,
Not a lot of people have Taylor relatives even.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. My grandfather was like, he died when I was real young. I was only like 8 or 9 when he passed
yeah.
away. But he was like if you look at pictures of my dad and my uncle when they were teenagers, like my dad is wearing a tweed suit in his yearbook picture from high school that my grandfather made for him.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
The
incredible.
tuxedo that he got married in, like legitimately like made from scratch kind of level of thing. So maybe it's in the blood a little bit or whatever.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
That's amazing. That's
yeah,
like there's so many different answers to that question that we get, like I think a significant number of people would say like movies or old movies, what have you, but
yeah.
that's a that's like a you kind of came to it honestly.
Yeah, yeah. And the funny thing was, after he was gone, when I started to get into it a little more seriously, when I was like 12 or 14 or whatever, I remember asking my dad if he had any of his old stuff, right? And my dad being like, I have some of it, but you can't wear it. And I was like, why not? And he's like, because your grandfather was like 5'1", you know. And
Right,
in my
right.
mind, he wasn't because I was a kid when he died, so he was just like a grown up, right?
Yeah,
And
totally.
I'll never forget. I went up in the attic and we had some of his old stuff, and there was like some suits. And I put the pants on, and I was only 12 years old at the time. And I put on a pair of pants, and they fit me in the waist, but barely came past my knee. And I was like, "Oh, so he was like a little roly poly Italian guy, like three
Oh,
feet
that's
tall.
Yeah,
that's
that's
killer.
Yeah, and in my mind, I don't see him that way. So my dad was like, "I'd give it all to you, but there's no one's ever going to be able to wear this stuff ever again."
Right, right.
So
What a
did you wear a uniform?
yeah, all
I
through
figured.
elementary school.
Do you
Yeah,
think that had like some, I don't know, influence on you in terms of at least like comfortability wearing that
yeah.
kind of clothing?
I find that among the friends that I have that also went to school in those days wearing uniforms, um, all the guys I know who grew up that way are incredibly comfortable putting on a suit to go to a thing.
yeah.
And I know other people who that complain and it's how can you wear that and it's so constricting or whatever. But
Those
I
doesn't
think for
fit.
those of us who started young, we're just like, I don't know, it's in a church, you put a tie on. Like,
Right,
just
right.
do it, what's the problem?
Sorry,
Uh,
man. I know you were.
Oh, I was just gonna, just out of curiosity, where was your grandfather's shop?
So he actually he used to just kind of make clothes himself for
Okay.
like people, and he also worked when my dad was younger. He worked in a factory. His job was actually working in a factory that made police uniforms,
Oh, okay.
like in the days when the cops were wearing like double-breasted brass
Yeah,
buttons all the way down the front. You know what I mean?
Right, right. Yeah.
He was like
for the
sewing those
tactical.
coats in a factory in Boston back when Boston had a little district in town that had that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That's cool.
There's
I
a
mean,
place in
there's
Baltimore called the Cop Shop, which
Yeah.
is like where all of the like they buy all of their whatever surveillance gear and shit.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then when he was older, he was He worked in it as like the in-house alterations guy at a couple
Okay,
of men's stores around. So
that's cool.
yeah,
I mean, Massachusetts has a very long history of clothing and footwear production.
yeah,
Rest in peace, Southwick. Sadly,
yeah. Of
but
course, right?
right.
Well, it's like more than probably anywhere else but New York, right? I mean, I
Yeah,
guess there's garment
probably. Yeah.
production in Los Angeles, but it's like, I don't know, sort of new school garment production, right? It's not the same type of uh it's not the same type of prestige or like
No, it's
heritage or
not
what have
like,
you.
like Southwick or the Alden factory or, even the LL Bean boots or anything like that. That's just got like so old school and so uh,
A
kind of
pillar of
distinctly
Americana.
American too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. Totally. Did you see? Obviously, you said you've been interested in how clothes look for the majority of your life. Like, are there any any people that stand out that you were kind of like, oh, like I want to emulate this person from back in the day?
Like when I was really young, it's like the same old answer from a lot of people, but those old movies, um, Fred Astaire was like a god
Right.
because not only were his clothes really nice, but he would wear them in like weird rule breaky kind of ways that I thought was really cool, you know. But like I've been kind of always been kind of fluid with it too. It's like there was a time where like Joe Strummer was also a god of like how to
Right. Oh
dress
yeah.
yourself to me, among that world. And sort of other things too. But I've gone through phases over my life, but Fred was probably the first one. I don't dance. I've never danced. He always had really good shoes. That was like a big part of it too. So
Oh yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Shoes, I feel like are one of those things across the board that just like if you're into clothing and kind of nerd out the way that we all do, like
yeah,
shoes are super important. It doesn't matter what kind of shoe, be it a Converse Chuck Taylor or an Air Jordan or
of course, yeah,
a long wing. Like that's the first thing I always notice about anyone,
yeah.
for
It's what
for for better or worse, sadly.
Yeah, and I mean, he was. I can remember being a kid and like trying to dress in that real kind of 1930s way, in whatever sort of slanted version of it I was putting together as a kid. I was also lucky because back then it's a little less so now, but there were a lot of thrift stores around
Yeah.
in Boston, and at the time, it was long enough ago that like most people's dads had been wearing suits to work for many, many years. So you'd walk in a thrift store and you could just find that stuff
Right.
all over the place, like a dime a dozen. And it was Boston, so there was Brooks Brothers all over the place, and like old stuff from J Press, and like it was nothing.
Yeah.
Um, and I didn't realize it at the time how spoiled I was, but like you could just I could walk into the Salvation Army and I could buy suits like that for $5 or
Oh,
something.
totally, totally.
Yeah, and then go home and wear them, and they wouldn't fit, and I wouldn't know what kind of things to put with them. But I thought it was all perfect in my head and whatever.
Of course, of
Um,
course.
yeah, but in reality, I was just like the weird kid from up the street who didn't play sports and instead was spending all his time on that stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you remember some of the first stuff that you thrifted?
Uh, I remember. So there's a store in Cambridge called Keezer's. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it. Um, Keezer's has been open for over 100 years, like since the
Oh,
19th
whoa.
century. Yeah, and it used to be. It's sort of like right near Harvard. So its history is that guys going to Harvard used to sell their old stuff to Keezers.
Right,
And it's
right.
always been like this secondhand clothing store, but from way before that was a thing, right?
Right, right.
Um, and that was like the money place, right? There would be Goodwill and Salvation Army and whatever, but Keezers would be like, if I wanted to save some money and go buy something, I would go there. And when I was maybe 14, I remember I saved for weeks until I had $45. And I went to Keezer's and I bought this gray double-breasted suit for $45 and like would just wear the thing until it fell apart, you know.
Hell
Um
yeah.
yeah, I bought a it's funny. I just recently got a one of those big full cut raglan sleeve coats from the 60s that everybody
Yes.
loves nowadays. And it
Right.
took me like 3 years to find it. But I had one that I bought at Keezer's that was made out of Harris tweed that weighed like 400 pounds.
Right.
That I
Yeah.
that I that I had to save $25 to go buy. You know. Hold on
Right.
just a sec. Someone's ringing my doorbell.
Yeah,
No
you're good.
worries.
No, you're good. We paused it. If you got a jet, that's fine. I
No,
mean,
no,
we're
no. I'm
like,
fine. I'm fine. Just one of the kids came home earlier than I expected. So
yeah. Well,
Mm.
could have been worse.
yeah.
It's like you could have been on the phone with, I don't know, the Soviets.
Would
I don't
that
know.
really have been worse though?
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
not so
true.
well, not worse than this, and we are a little Soviet in a way.
Mm.
True. True.
So we haven't asked this question yet, but we do ask this question to everyone. I think it's a sort of specific formation. What is your first memory of clothing? Do you have something that really stands out to you? Like
Uh,
going really back, I mean, something that you thought like, oh my God, I have to have that, aside from the gray double-breasted?
so this is I don't specifically remember this from when I was a kid, but a few years ago I was in a thrift store with my wife, and I found a pair of these really nice Tony Lama cowboy boots, right? And we had split up in the store, and she was looking in the women's stuff, and I was over there. And she came and found me in the shoes, and I had them on, and I was checking them out. And she was like, "You're not serious." And I was like, "I'm as surprised as you are, but I think I am," you know. And we had this whole. I was like, and they were $12, and I was all about it. And then I bought them, and they instantly became like the favorite shoes. I would wear them all the time. Since then, I've bought a million more pairs. I wear them at work. They're good for my back. Everything about them is great, you know. But I was like never a cowboy boot guy before that, right?
Right.
So
Right.
I had them on one day right after I bought them, and I was up in my parents' apartment, and I had them on with, I think, like a turtleneck and a tweed jacket, and a pair of jeans, right? And my dad's like, "Wait here," and he goes and he gets this photo album and he takes out this picture of me, and I'm like 7 years old, and I'm wearing exactly the same outfit, right? And I had no memory of it. And he goes, "You got it in your head about these boots, and you like wouldn't shut up about it until your mother and I took you somewhere to buy them." And then he said, he took me to buy them, and they were going to get some like kid boots, but I insisted that they be real ones. Like I
Right.
didn't want like the like cheapo toy cowboy boots. They had to be. And so I guess that happened when I was like 7 years old.
That's amazing.
I don't
That's like,
remember it, but I was like, I suppose no one's surprised by this. But
because I just bought a pair, and my students who are in West Baltimore
Mhm.
were like, "Why are you wearing cowboy boots?" To which I said, "Because I thought it would be funny." And
Yeah.
so they asked me, "Is this lizard? Is this like a snake? What is this?" And yes, in fact, it is lizard. And so one of them, I had a pimples on my neck, and my student said, "Did you get bitten by a snake?"
No, they're
So
great. I mean,
I find
like I
them
said,
really, really,
I'm a
really
Boston
comfortable.
guy, lifelong Boston guy in the same house. I have no business wearing that stuff either, but
They're awesome though. I like
I love
didn't
them.
really
Yeah,
believe the hype, but like my dad swore by them. He wore them with a suit every day. Like
yeah,
just they're nice. They're comfortable. They are well thought out.
they certainly are. Yes, and I spend at my job. I'm on my feet like all day, and it makes a huge difference because they're designed well for that. You know. Plus, the kids at work laugh because the place where I work has concrete floors, um, and I'm one of the managers, and they're like, the good thing is we can always hear you coming. like, I'm like,
Yeah,
well, what are you doing that you need to hear me coming before I get there?
Right. That's
Yeah,
awesome. uh, yeah, so we briefly got into, you know, your blog days. What what kind of inspired your, you know, your initial posting on Blogspot and things that you continue to do to this day?
So the original one had a little bit of a little bit of snark to its start, because I don't know if you guys remember, there was a blog back then called A Suitable Wardrobe,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah, I remember.
Um, yeah, and in those days, I remember like the sartorialist, like the original wave sartorialist was a big thing, and I would look at that all the time. And then this suitable wardrobe guy popped up, and don't get me wrong, he's got really nice stuff. You know, it's
Yeah,
all very
totally.
expensive, it's all handmade. But it used to bug the hell out of me that the tone, because back then it was more about writing. You know,
Right.
now it's all like, you know, photos and like little 15-second TikTok style videos or whatever. Um, but at the time, it was writing, maybe accompanied by a few photos, right? And it used to drive me nuts that the tone of this guy's writing was all. It had this vibe where like a gentleman dresses like this, and everyone else is a muck savage down in the swamp, or you know what I mean,
Right.
or
And it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
well,
yeah,
and you wouldn't be getting your winter suit in any less
right.
time than 9 months. I mean,
All of that, right? And it was called A
yeah,
Suitable Wardrobe, and I was like,
yeah.
to suggest that anything else would be less suitable. So that's where the name came from. I was just like, I'm gonna do what this guy's doing, but my whole thing is gonna be like, you can't believe how cheap this was. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
dude, and
Like,
that's the fucking
yeah,
shot. That's like the entire point. And there's like cooking and there's like creative writing. You're kind of like triangulating as you're going, like to figure out what you're going to make of this thing. When at the time, people are not really doing this. This
I
is
guess,
like
you know, and
blogging in its infancy.
it wasn't even like intentional in that way, but I guess in the back of my head, the thing about it was, I wasn't seeing anything, and you're not even just about clothing, but anything that suggested that you could be like a cultivated person with like really good taste, and not be a bazillionaire too.
Right,
And
right.
that the two things didn't
Right.
have to be mutually exclusive, you
Right.
know, just that it took more effort on your part if you didn't have mountains of money to just throw at it, you know. And in the end, I think what I learned through it and through writing it, or what I hope I transferred to some other folks that might have read it, was that you almost have to be better at it if you don't have the money. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? To like really know what you're doing, because it's easy if you're, you know, if you live that lifestyle and you can go to whatever great restaurant any night. You can order $400 bottle of
You don't have
wine
to learn
off
how
the
to
list.
cook.
You can have all your clothes made and like, you know, go to the trunk show and what. Of course, everything's going to be nice and wonderful, and you know. But if you have to find your way to something like that when the options that are being given to you handily are garbage, you know.
right, right.
Um, that it's almost like more intentional under those circumstances, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, and
It,
it was just
I think it's just
fun writing about
wonderful.
it. Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
and that was not a common ideology. That was like, I don't know. I feel like there was so much talking about like consumption, and
yeah,
that was always the main point. Was like,
luxury brands,
right,
all that stuff. You know, fancy sneakers, no matter
you
what
wrote a
like realm you were
haiku.
in. Yeah, and yeah, it was just I started doing it, and it kind of stuck with it. It was fun after a while, you know. But the thing too is, I feel like you know, thrifting is just like the most mainstream thing in the world nowadays. But
right,
but
right.
it wasn't back then. It just was not. You know,
No,
um,
it was
you
like looked
know,
down on.
yeah, like kids would not want to wear stuff to school that their mom found at the thrift store because that was like crappy. You know,
Yeah,
I was into it because I always like old things, so I would go to thrift stores
Yeah,
because the stuff there would be old, and I didn't really care about the stuff that was going on in the moment as much. Um, and in fact, it's almost like when I stopped it years ago, it was because it had become so mainstream that it had kind of lost some of the charm. You know what I mean? Like it was just, it wasn't such a special thing, and it was just, it was. This isn't even a complaint, but it was just like it had become a thing that people do,
Right,
which was
right.
fine. But I didn't feel like, the need to sort of write about it in the way that I was had kind of slipped away at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I feel like you have pivoted, especially coming back to Instagram. Like I love the little reels and things that you do that you're like,
yeah,
oh, this sweater was 6.99, blah blah blah.
hmm
Yeah, that I feel like that kind of has the same, in my opinion, has the same kind of like vibe and feel to it that you had back then, even though it's not
Yeah,
long form writing.
it's translated pretty well because it's like about like the thrift of it, but it's also about like the sort of DIY nature of your approach to it's seemingly everything. Like I'm
yeah.
pretty sure it was you who said that buying this type of stuff like gives you access to the American dream.
Yeah,
Didn't it?
it's like I remember in the early days, it was almost like thrown around as an insult to be like aspirational or whatever, um, and then God, and then as the early blog thing happened, and like the trad guys and the iGents,
The iGens are the worst.
that became crazy because then they were like, it was unacceptable to wear polo because that was like the aspirational nonsense, and I was just like, I don't care, man. It's got a button down collar, bow tie, stuff is nice. You know what I mean? Like when I was a kid, polo was like the fancy stuff from the mall. Like everybody
Right.
wanted it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
Well,
I
it's
totally.
was
like it
into that
becomes
too.
like
Yeah,
a racially or class coded like
yeah.
fuck off, which is like bad politics.
Yeah, and I mean, I did grow up in Boston, so like, I get like, I know about those like old money. I know the difference between the people who have the old money and the people who don't. It's
Right.
been like present in the city that I grew up in a way that's realer than it is in a lot of other places in the country. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Harvard University is around the corner from where I live. I know, I get it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and even Harvard's different now, but you can tell if and it's not like that I was wanted to be those guys or whatever. It's just like they had nice clothes, they eat
Yeah, it's
well,
just
whatever.
nice
I
stuff, right?
like the
It's like
stuff. You know what
practical,
I mean?
it's
Yeah,
nice.
exactly.
I think that it people have talked about like the like economical aspect of this style of dressing, like wearing a jacket like this, you only need to have like two shirts really and a couple of ties and you're fine.
Yeah,
So they say.
right. And it never works out that way. It's the
Right.
exact opposite.
Right, exactly.
Um,
But the point is it's a easy to follow formula.
Yeah, exactly. And then once you've got the sort of basic tenets of it nailed down, you can do all sorts of wild stuff with it, depending on your own
It's
personal
very like
inclinations or whatever.
Venn
Yeah,
diagram sort of.
yeah. I'm also fortunate enough to have along the way developed a friendship with Charlie Davidson from the Andover shop too.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah, he and I became friends for a few years before he passed away too. And his that's like all part of that world, but a completely different thing than some of this other stuff too. Um,
How do you
and it,
mean? I mean,
how,
it's like a different industry, right?
well,
Like
I mean, it was different with him in that, like, by way of example, we had, it's gone now, but there was an old Brooks Brothers store in Boston, right? If I'm not mistaken, it was the second location of Brooks Brothers after Madison Avenue in New York. So we had that, right? Um, J Press, in the old days when J Press was only three stores, one of them was in Cambridge. And then and those are kind of like stalwarts of a certain thing. And then there was the Andover shop, which sort of got looped into that, but it's different. The Andover shop had like a sort of a style and for lack of a better term, a zestiness about it that the others didn't. Um, it's hard to put into words, because if I don't know if you had ever been in the old Andover shop, but it was very much like just what you'd think it was. It was like stuffed to the gills. It had thick carpet on the floor. That one whole wall was just rolls of tweed fabric. Um, but it just felt different. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's
There,
well. That's like
yeah,
when I mean it's a different like. It's sort of more hands-on. Like I haven't been there, but I do think I can picture it, right? And it
yeah.
seems more blue collar, if that's possible.
I don't even know. That's the thing. That's not even the right word. It's just that the guys that shopped there because the other stores weren't quite doing it for them.
Right,
And
right.
the differences are subtle, but they're definitely there. Do you know what I mean? Like, um, for example, going back to all the nonsense with the iGents and everything, right? Um, all those guys who would die before they would put on a pair of pleated pants, right? You'd go into the Andover shop and they didn't sell flat front pants. They only sold pleated pants for a time.
Yeah,
Right.
so it's
Yeah.
like the Uber trad.
Deep forward pleated pants with a button down collar shirt. You know what I mean? Like all these like rules that you were supposed to follow and they were never applicable there. Do you know what I mean? And I'd be like, well, this guy is like the king hell guy of them all, and he's not doing any of that stuff that you guys are getting so wound up about. So, you know, um, I hesitate to use the word fearlessness, but there was just this like, I'm going to do it because it's cool, and I'm going to be like the king of this stuff, but I'm not going to follow any of the rules that the other people are beholden to.
Right,
That
right.
was what was so great about that place, and you couldn't deny it. So
Yeah, for me, just I've never been to the Andover shop or O'Connell's, but those two shops are like,
yeah,
they're both legendary because they kind of like, I don't know, they kind of gave a finger to the more like stuffy uh J Presses and Brooks Brothers of the world. Like I've never been into Brooks Brothers and had
right.
an enjoyable shopping experience. But
Right.
like,
There's a reason why all the jazz musicians bought their clothes from Charlie
right, right,
instead of
exactly.
J Press, which is literally a block away in those days.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost like a punk rock like suiting store in a
Yeah,
lot of ways.
in a weird way. Yeah.
It's I swear there's a word for this, but I can't reach it at the moment. I don't want to put you on the spot. I wanted to ask about Ivy Style, or at least
hmm
your uh if you have a little like not like a little definition, but like what do you think about Ivy Style becoming, I don't know, ascendant again, or like has it ever really left?
I mean that's a tough question to answer again because of where I am. It's like it never
Right.
went away
And
in
then it's never
Boston.
left.
And what's weird about it is again with all these rules and all this stuff that you're supposed to know and whatever is that my experience of it had always been like again, like I said, there are those old types that grew up this way, sailing and going to golf courses and all this stuff, right? And I did not at all. But but regardless of that, like when I was a kid, like if you had to go to something dressy, that's how the moms would dress the kids in Boston. You know what I mean? Like if it was like if you had to go to someone's wedding, your mom would go buy you khaki pants and a navy blue blazer and a pair of penny loafers and a striped tie because that was just like what the nice clothes looked like around here. So the weird thing about it to me is like it's no one thought twice about it for all those years when I was growing up. That's just like
Because
what the
bizarrely,
nice.
it's the uniform, right? It's
That's
the
just
Boston uniform.
well, yeah. I mean, the school uniforms kind of hew to that formula. Everything. Um, and I feel like part of it is that it's a set of loose rules that you can learn as a child that don't have to change your whole life. So I think that's why it kind of comes and goes and never goes away, and why it sort of always looks good because the intention of it always was just like just know about these things
Right.
and you'll be all set forever. You know what I mean?
I mean,
And
in its own way too. Like Ivy style, trad, whatever the fuck you want to call it, it is a uniform in a lot of ways.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Think about the man in the gray flannel suit and that kind of shit from back in the day. Like
Well, and
that
two, like it's military.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of, I feel like probably a lot of those uh, businessmen in the heyday of, mid-century had done some time in the military, and like, or they went to a school that had a uniform, so it was like you were almost predisposed to enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a particular style that suits almost everybody.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Skinny guys, fat guys, tall guys, short. If you put it on, it's fine. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And,
yeah.
and there's
Well,
not a lot of things that you can say that about.
yeah,
So
yeah. Like a shot perfecto doesn't look good on everyone.
no,
Like,
of course not.
but a blazer or a sport coat and a pair of like well-fitted trousers, once you figure out how that style works for your body, and like what you need to alter, etc. Like it just looks, it, for lack of a better word, timeless, and I hate that fucking
Yeah,
phrase, but
no, of
it's
course.
very true.
Yeah, and then all these people who still sort of like get a charge out of ragging on Polo or Ralph Lauren. I'm like, the reason that guy is as successful as he was is that
Right.
is because he's dealing in that in a very distinct way that's got some more flash to it than like the real old school stuff. But that's why it works. That's why people like it.
I
Right.
You know?
remember hearing people shitting on Ralph like I don't know, I'd say years ago, but like at this point it's like I don't know, I feel like almost everyone is like happy to wear it, frankly.
Oh
I,
no,
Like
now it's like the hottest thing. You know why? This is actually I saw you interviewed John Tinseth a
yeah.
while
yeah,
back.
yeah.
So
Wait,
you know
are
him
you
well.
friends? Are you
Yeah,
friends with
yeah.
John?
Yes, yes. One thing he said to me that I'll never forget is we were talking about thrift stores, and he said the thing about the thrift stores is the best stuff that you can find in the thrift stores is always from about 30 years previous, right? So, like when I was a kid, it was awesome because there was all these clothes from the '60s in the thrift stores. You know what I mean? And then there was a rough period where there was nothing because the sort of casual Friday era had caught up to that.
Yeah.
But now everything from 30 years ago is like Polo in the 90s when it was like at its like raging best.
Oh, 100%.
So that's why it's the hot thing because there's a lot of it around
I,
from like a lot of the good stuff from back then. And it was a mass production brand, so there's a ton of it. But even
yeah.
still, it
It's
was good.
utilitarian
And a
as we had
lot,
discussed.
Yeah,
Like
like, I don't think people realize too, a lot of the like most sought after polo, especially the like more streetwear oriented shit like Snow Beach or
yeah, yeah,
stadium stuff, that sold so badly in store that it all went to outlets. And so,
yeah.
yeah,
Which is why it's so hard to find now because
right.
everybody wasn't wearing it when it was new.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, but that
totally.
whole thing, it would just kill me. I'd be like, since when is like, why is aspiration cast in a negative light? Like, why?
because it's try
You
hard,
know,
right? It's like you can't be aspiring to do something and be cool if you are a white guy,
yeah,
I
but
would
it's
say.
probably like it's probably not the right word for it, though. Do you know what I
No, it's
mean?
not the right word
Yeah,
for it. But it is like people it's like striving, you know? People are like people don't like that. Even if it's fine. Even if you
right,
want to become an astronaut,
right.
people don't like that.
No, and I think maybe people are over that a little bit now. But that did
Definitely.
crack me up because I mean, not to sound like the old guy about it, but like with all the old polo stuff being all the thing right now, and it's I had my moment of being like, yeah, I always knew that was the good stuff
Yeah,
back when you all were shitting on it. You know what I mean? Like I was all about the forward pleated pants. I used to have to. I don't know if you guys remember, but actually, Zach DeLuca, who's also a good friend of mine, it back in those days we used to. We would post stuff whenever we had outfits that had pleated pants on them. The tagline at the end of the write up would be brought to you by the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Pleats. And I'd just be like, and I remember being like, I'm kind of a bigger dude. These pants fit me better, like it's okay. No one's going to die here.
yeah, yeah,
My most interacted with Instagram thing ever was asking on a former guest of the show, Clea's post, are those forward policing your pants? Or are you just happy to see me?
Yeah.
Nice.
Haha. Yeah,
Haha.
I like that one. I like that one. I'm still
Yeah.
getting likes from that joke.
Nice. Good. Good on you, Connor.
But
Yeah, gotta do
it
something.
comes and it goes, and I think that the takeaway from all of that is you get informed from a lot of sources and a lot of outside influences, right? Um, but the moment that you're looking for is when that all gels, like all those bits gel for you in whatever way they do, and so to hew to one thing or the other with like a razor sharp line kind of doesn't make any sense, because that's not you. You've learned that thing, but like,
Yeah.
and there's, yeah.
I think a big thing about having borderline obsessive interest in clothing is that like you can take from all of the influences and mix it together in your own way. You
Yeah, and
know,
if you don't, you'll get bored. That's the
yeah.
thing. I feel like
100%.
people that are into this, it's like, who really has to wear a suit to work anymore?
Yeah,
Very, very few people, and for the most part, they're very high end jobs, right? So I feel like we've come to a point in history where, like, if you, to some degree, if you're going to do this at all, it's just because you're enjoying it,
yeah,
right? It's because you want to. So just do what you want to. You know what I mean? Like, play around with it, have some more fun with it.
yeah. The fun is the key.
Yeah,
Is the best part about it.
yeah. I mean, I work.
That's why I bought the cowboy boots. I
I mean,
mean,
I could literally go to my job in the same pair of jeans and the same sweatshirt every day, and it wouldn't make a damn bit of difference to the performance of my job. Nor would anyone, I would say, nor would anyone even notice, except people would notice because it was me doing it and notice that
Yeah,
something was
right,
wrong. But
right.
like, my point being, like, I could survive with two pairs of pants and a couple of sweatshirts just fine. Anyone could. When you don't, it's a choice, and it's a fun choice.
it's creative
So
expression. I
exactly.
think
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like the first creative act of my day is like, what am I gonna wear?
yeah.
Sure.
I think this is the point that Derek Guy makes often. It's like, um, you know, there's you gotta have you have to have fun with what you're doing, and like you have to care um, and appreciate the like artistic nature of putting a fit together.
Of course. Yeah. And I mean, nowadays it's like you gotta. I don't want to get all political about it, but it's like
Get political.
any little joy you can have in your life that's not harming others, I see no reason not to indulge in it to
Same
the
here.
fullest.
100% agree.
Because there's a lot of crap around that's not bringing people a lot of joy right now. So, find it where you can,
Yeah,
right?
But even that is kind of like you were talking about earlier, that like push and pull between uh, having a specific label for every type of outfit,
Mm-hmm.
as is popular in some circles on the internet, and like just not talking about it at all. It's like
Yeah.
there's a gray area there, that I think it would be good for people to become more comfortable with, I
Yeah,
guess.
and some of it comes with the wisdom of age, for lack of a better term. I mean, I was as guilty as anybody in the old days about getting incensed because I saw some college kid wearing pajama pants at the liquor store or something like that. You know what I mean? And like,
right, right.
and it's so disrespectful and blah 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 blah. And I don't care anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It really does not
yeah.
matter. You know?
There's a lot of
Yeah,
things that piss me off all the fucking time.
yeah.
What someone else is wearing is really not one of them.
Yeah, I just
That
can't
yeah.
imagine getting pissed about it anymore. Like,
Yeah,
Because right.
the only time I get pissed is when someone's wearing like quote unquote performance shit at the grocery store, and I can smell them from 10 feet away because they just left the gym or the golf course or whatever.
Yeah.
Nazi regalia, also not.
Yeah, yeah,
Also
yeah.
a
That's
no.
probably yeah.
Any
There are moments.
yeah,
Yeah.
Any
well,
type of
Yeah.
regalia, we
I'm
don't
just
want it.
I'm talking about normal ass people, not fucking racist like assholes. So
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
so this is a something I feel like is kind of at the core of our show is the connection between like subculture and
Hmm.
clothing. It seemingly especially tailored clothing. You mentioned Joe Strummer, and I've always kind of picked up on the vibe that you're probably like into punk or something back in the day,
Oh, for sure. I
especially being
played
in
in,
Boston.
yeah, I played in bands for years. I was big into, especially after high school. I was big into that stuff.
That's awesome.
Uh, I still am, always will be. But I mean, it predates widespread internet use, so
Yeah,
there are much less photographs of it. But I was all about sewn tight pants and studded belts and big boots and crazy haircuts and all that stuff
totally.
for a long time. So, but it's like you said, it's the same at its core. It's the same attitude,
Yeah, definitely,
um,
definitely.
because there was a time when wearing a suit was as glaring a thing as that might have been in the 1980s.
Right.
Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
never been one to just go along with it, I guess. But
Nice.
yeah,
Nice.
Well, and
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit about like wearing a tie when it isn't called for is like
yeah,
the rebellion, right? I mean, that's like uh, you can't fire me because I quit sort of mentality.
Well, I
right,
mean,
right,
even going back to like the Beatles and Stones, like that, and earlier, like the jazz guys of the 40s and 50s, like tailored clothing, did not. If you were a musician doing something that was like outside of the quote unquote norm at the
yeah.
time, like wearing tailored clothing did not make you seem like your average Joe. It was like it was kind of an act of rebellion because
Well,
of the art you were making.
yeah, and the other thing that I didn't realize when I was younger that I did come to learn is that even within the realm of tailored clothing, there are differences. A zoot suit is not the same as what a guy was wearing to the bank in the
Totally,
1920s. Do you know what
totally.
I mean? Like they're both
Mm.
suits, but there was a time I didn't realize that difference. You look at like some of those suits that like jazz musicians were wearing in the 40s with that like super exaggerated shoulders and
Yeah,
huge
Hmm.
lapels and like big giant pants. And I mean, of course, everything was kind of full cut, but there's a difference between like a musician in a nightclub and a guy working in an office somewhere.
right, right, right. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, even I can remember the moment when I can remember being younger and you'd hear all this stuff about how shocking everybody thought the Beatles were, like when they came to America, right? And I can remember being young and thinking like these guys wore suits on stage, like what was everybody so scared of? And then one day realizing that because like stove type sharkskin pants and pointy boots and like long hair is
right.
it's a suit, but it's what I mean. But
Yeah,
it's like
100%.
there's an
It's not the
aggression
same.
to that. It has an aggressive vibe to it that like other people's clothes didn't, you know. Or those weird suits that they would have that would button up and have like a shirt collar on them instead of like a regular lapel
Oh
or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
You know,
Like
yeah,
Brian Jones wore Nehru collar shit. I
yeah.
guess all the Stones did, but like
Bringing it back to my grandfather, my dad told me one time when he was like, so my dad would have been 16 in 1966. He tried to get my grandfather to make him a suit with no lapels because he saw the Beatles wearing it on TV, and my grandfather refused to do it.
that's
Wow.
He's
fantastic.
like, no, he's like, I'm not putting my name on anything like that.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
no shade whatsoever to that at all.
yeah,
Also, going back to Zoot Suits, I don't think I've ever said this on the on the program, but I definitely bought like the world's shittiest quality Zoot Suit off eBay for my junior prom
yeah.
because that
Wow.
like I'm yeah that was during the swing revival and all that shit. So
Oh, I tried to fake it once. I used to go and I would try to find I would just find regular suits. Like I would try to find double-breasted suits that were like really long for someone like
Right.
much taller than me,
Right.
and then just have the pants hemmed to the right length so they'd have like a wicked high waist and a really long coat. But it wasn't really that kind of a suit. You know what I mean? I was
Yeah,
just trying to
yeah.
like
You
fake it somehow. Yeah,
you kind of end up looking more like David Byrne than like an actual,
yeah, yeah.
jazz
My
musician.
my example of that is seeing Portugal the Man play. I think I've talked about this on the show before. And like the guy had like a hoodie under his corduroy, maybe tweed jacket. I thought it was so fucking cool. And then I saw one like at Kohl's or something that was like incorporated.
Yeah, yeah.
And so
Not
I bought it
Yeah.
and I never wore it. I didn't even wear it one time because I was like, when I got it home, I was like, what the fuck? This is like not real. This is like a fake. This is like a Trojan horse.
How many times did you put it on and take it off before you left the house?
I don't think at all.
Did you even try? Yeah.
No, I mean I must have,
Okay.
or maybe my dad gave it to me. I can't remember exactly how I came to have this thing, but I like remember the tag, and like I definitely didn't wear it because it's like you can't have something phony like that.
No, it's no good. You can get away with it when you're like 14 and you don't know anything
Right.
and you really, really mean it. There's something
Oh,
to be
I
said
was
for
like
that too.
17,
You know,
but
yeah.
even still, like you can't. It's setting off the wrong kind of alarm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Connor, Joe. I feel like you and I are probably around the same age. Connor is a few years younger, so he got some of the bullshit that we had already worked past. Sadly,
Yeah.
Yeah. I keep coming sort of circling around to this. You have come up on this show like a number of times out of a lot of different people's mouths. You have this ideology about clothing. Somehow you're buying the coolest shit for cheap. And you sort of emphasize that this stuff isn't really worth anything, right? It's like what it's worth, what is ascribed to it, which is maybe true
Sure.
with a lot of stuff, but is I think even more true about clothing. Um, so there's some kind of like punk DIY aesthetic like that is somehow attached to tailored clothing that is uh, nebulously understood on this program, and we were curious if you had any um, insight about that. I mean, as
I
Joe
think that
Strummer
the
earlier.
biggest part of it with tailored clothing, it may be a little less true today, but like, especially if you're buying old vintage stuff, is that there is absolutely no reason to have any adherence whatsoever to brand names. Like,
Right.
there are ones that like it's good to know the ones that you like, because like Brooks Brothers clothes have a shape to them. Polo stuff has a look to it. Whatever you like it, it works for you. That all of that, and you can look for it. You can buy it. And you know it's going to be good if it's from something like that. But the real thing is to just know the good stuff. Because especially if you're buying vintage, like back when, like you find like the most gorgeous jacket in the world, and the only tag on the inside is the name of some department store that closed 40 years ago in Pittsburgh or something that no one's ever
Yeah,
heard of.
yeah.
Do
Shout
you know
out
what I mean?
Pittsburgh.
Like,
Yeah,
just
I
like,
got one. I got one just a few months ago.
but you know what I mean? I'm like, that's the trick,
Yeah,
because the brand name stuff, especially nowadays, where like less of it's in the thrift stores and more of it's online. So it's being flipped. So people are buying stuff and selling stuff. And I do that too. I'm not going to disparage that. Um, but like, if you're looking for the bargains, you got to like know that like, there's a lot of good stuff out there that you never heard of. Don't even look at that. Just like it's either good or it's not. You know what I mean? Like, even
and
stuff
that's
like,
really the like is sort of institutional knowledge, right? Like that you
yeah,
have accumulated.
yeah, and even to some degree, it's like, I could say the same thing about stuff that's like made in the USA, right? You find old stuff made in the USA, it's going to be good. That doesn't necessarily mean that everything you come across in a thrift store that was made in China is necessarily a piece of crap.
totally, totally.
The thing is, you got to look at the thing, and it either is or is not junk, and you
Yeah,
need to know how to tell the difference without that kind of like shading your decision. I don't know if you saw like it took me a long time to come around to doing reels. I still feel like an idiot
Oh
dancing
yeah,
around in front
don't
of the
we
camera.
all? Don't we
Yeah,
all?
dude.
But it's the way the wind is blowing and whatever. But in a couple of the ones I did, like this sweater I have on today, and a couple of others that I have never in my life owned a Shaggy Dog sweater from J Press, right? This, but so every time I put one of these like fuzzy Shetland sweaters on that I have, that's really nice, that I got for like $4 in a thrift store. In the videos, I just call it "not a Shaggy Dog," $4. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah. And the funniest
Like
part
yeah.
is that like any of these sweaters probably were made in the same exact factory or by
It's
the
the
same
same
exact
thing.
people.
That's what
Yeah,
I mean. It's the same thing.
yeah, totally.
Yeah. That's. I'm not looking for. I mean, like I said, if you find one that says Shaggy Dog and it's $5 and it's your size, score, you win. But you find the other one that says like it just says Country Club or something stupid in the tag.
Yeah, yeah. It was
Yeah,
made
like
by
yeah,
Harley for whatever fucking department store or
right.
brand, you know.
And the other part of that too, I think, is it's not the Shaggy Dog itself that's cool. It's like, what is it about it that's cool? Not just that it's a sweater from J Press. It's the whole thing. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? So
100%.
like, that's not what you're buying. You're buying the all of it, not just like that little piece. And I think more people know that nowadays, which
I
is
think so
cool.
too. Yeah, I
You
mean,
know,
like I did. Were you a Style Forum member? I can't recall.
sort of. I never got that into it. I was on there in the beginning, but yeah, I mean, even nowadays, it's like I've always kind of just stick to one platform.
Yeah, I got you. I got
I
you.
know, like the Wee Johns guys invited me to. They have like a bunch of stuff going on Discord. And I signed up for it, but I barely ever check it. I don't think I've ever posted anything.
It's
Yeah,
too
But
much,
I
man.
don't
It's way too
understand.
much.
No
Meeting up
shade.
is a sin.
Yeah, no
I
shade
just
to anyone. I like once like MFA on Reddit and that shit started. Like
hmm
I just kind of never understood how it worked, and Discord is about the same for me. Like,
yeah, I mean, I'm too old for that.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
that's the wrong
It's
thing
too
to
much to
say,
keep
but
up
like
with.
I can't handle more than one platform at a time.
yeah. I feel it. I
And,
feel it.
and these days it's like Instagram. I know how it works, and it's easy,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's fine.
Well, guess
And
what?
I'm
You're
not,
on Zencaster and Instagram.
of
So
course, yeah.
look at that. Tandem platforms, even.
It was Facebook for a time. It was Blogger before that.
Right.
Um, Interestingly enough, I just remembered, this is kind of a little off topic, but back when I was also selling a lot of clothes online too for some years when my kids were little. Right, I had like an online store, um, and Affordable Wardrobe. I actually had this place that I used to rent out, that was open as a shop on the weekends. Right,
Oh shit! I did not
and
know this.
yeah, for years, because it had got to the point I was selling clothes online so much that I just rented this place to have somewhere to do it, so that the stuff wasn't all over my house all the time.
Yep.
So I would like go down there during the week to take photos and post stuff online and run to the post office with stuff that had sold and whatever. But because it was in a place that was zoned for retail, I would open it up on the weekends. And at the time, I uh, I got like Twitter and Tumblr, some of the others, as like a business move, just so
Yeah,
that I
yeah,
had like a presence kind of across the ones that were happening in the moment, right?
Well,
And
yeah, if you succeed, you want to have the Twitter account, you know?
and to this day, I still don't know why, but Twitter banned me completely in 2015,
Wait, what?
and I have no idea why. I can't. People send me links to stuff on Twitter and X. It won't let me see them.
Yeah,
I
right.
was like hard banned, like 10 years ago for some
Well,
reason.
you missed the platform dying almost completely.
No,
So,
I know, and it only comes up because now it's like a dead thing or whatever. But for years, friends of mine would like text me links to something they saw on Twitter, and I'd be like, I can't see that, dude. They're like, why not? And I'm like, cause I don't know. I'm like public enemy number one over at Twitter, and I
Uh, Honestly,
it's weird. I
that's a badge
hardly
of
ever
honor.
used it. I know it's like a funny thing, and I still to this day remember the last thing I posted there was we had like some kind of like disastro weather in Massachusetts, right? Like some huge storm, a bunch of houses at the coast got like washed into the sea, or something like that, right? And it was when Deval Patrick was the governor, right? And I reposted an article from the Boston Globe about how a politician should dress to visit a disaster area. That was, and it was a Boston Globe, and it was like, here's Deval Patrick, he's wearing a windbreaker and a pair of sneakers, you see, because it's a disaster and it's raining, like that.
Right.
That's
And
the fucking news media these days, though. I
it was
mean,
just so weird. I didn't say anything about it. I just reposted it. And
and that was all over.
this was way before Donald Trump threw the toilet paper at the people in Puerto Rico or any of that.
Right. Right.
Like, so, like, it couldn't have been that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
So
They don't want you to
strange.
win.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. An
You're,
affordable wardrobe going viral was against the ruling class's wishes.
Oh, viral, I suppose. Whatever.
well, it's
Right?
because listen, it's a thrifty approach, and they don't want that. They want you to pay retail. But we're here
Yeah.
to tell you, don't pay retail.
Don't pay
I
retail.
guess. I guess not.
Pay retail from small companies. Pay
But
retail
it's
from good companies.
but it's funny because the reason I stopped selling clothes so much and closed that thing down was because when I started, like, no one was doing it, and then by the end, the whole blog thing had happened and all these
Right.
other guys had come up, and it got to the point where all these little thrift stores that I would visit and find stuff. I used to joke with Zach about it because he was doing it at the same time too. I'd be like, yeah, you come to some Salvation Army in the middle of nowhere and you go back in the men's department and there's a guy back there with a barber jacket and a beard. I just turn around and leave. I'm already too late. Like that
Yeah.
guy didn't used to be there 5 years ago when I would show up to these
Man,
places.
as
You know,
a person that does vintage full time, like that is, yeah, I share this sentiment.
yeah, and it was like a bittersweet thing. I was like, I suppose I feel some responsibility for having brought this about, since I went
No, dude,
I
online
you
and
mean,
tried
like
to be you
made it my
tried to
mission
be
to tell
honest and good
everybody.
about it.
and honestly, in my opinion, people have been selling secondhand shit, whether it be antique or
Yeah,
vintage, long before we were alive, and that will continue long before or long after we're dead. So,
Well, maybe. I mean, I this is not what I'm seeing in my neck of the woods. I'm seeing like Crofton Barrow and Goodfellow only,
oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
right? Which
100%. Well, I
now,
mean, it
how is
like
it happening that way? It doesn't really matter, but
Well,
effectively, that's what's happening. They're
it
new with
is tough.
tax.
Even up here in Boston. The stores are not what they used to be, and I spend a lot more time buying stuff on eBay, or trading with people online or whatever. Spending more for it, still getting things cheaper than their
right,
value or worth or whatever.
totally.
But it's not. I do still enjoy the clothes, but I kind of miss, the hunting used to be a
Yeah,
lot more fun.
yeah,
Um,
for sure. When I go into five
you know,
thrifts in a day and I walk out with three things, I'm like, great. This is
three things and two of them are kind of just okay.
yeah, yeah.
Right?
Like
Yeah.
they were $3, and I was like, this is
Yeah.
cool enough to buy for $3. But like
Yeah, exactly.
I think going back to a point you made earlier, like a lot of finding the or thrifting and secondhand shit in general is kind of like gold mining.
Yeah.
But when you have the knowledge and the experience that you can like touch something or see something on the rack and be like, okay, this is going to be good, and then it is good, is like revolutionary. Like not everyone is that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess, I wish it was still like it was, but
Yeah, me too. Me
I
too.
suppose I'm happy to have been a part of like making more people aware of it,
Right, right.
Um,
And I don't think that it's a bad thing that more
yeah.
people are appreciating secondhand.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I've never been one to use a term that my kids are using to gatekeep stuff like
right,
that.
right, right. Yeah,
I'm just like, well, that's just like such an asshole move to me. The other one that used to come up too, more so in the old days, is like you'd get these guys who'd be like, some kid would post the thing. And he'd be wearing like Nantucket Reds, but they were from J. Crew. And they'd be like, "Oh, those aren't the real Nantucket Reds. Murray's Toggery Shop." Blah, blah, blah.
right,
And I
right.
would always be the one who would be like, no, but like this kid is like interested in this and is like doing the best he can with what he knows at the moment.
100%. Yeah.
And like he will move from that to the like, don't shit on him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
like
Totally.
like like I applaud the effort. Like it's not bad. It could be better. Keep going.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We all start somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And again, the label thing, it's like, who gives a shit? If he never told you where they came from, you probably wouldn't have said anything,
Right.
Like,
100%.
yeah, it would have been fine. So,
Well, to yeah, this has been a great chat, and I feel like the three of us are very aligned on a lot of the ways that we see shit. But to end things, what's some of the wildest or your favorite finds over the years?
it's just
It
been a
doesn't have
lot
to
of,
be. Yeah, I know there's been
yeah.
many, but
Let me think of what some of the, oh, you want to know one of the craziest things that ever happened? Is, one time I found I found this tweed jacket at a thrift store, right? And it was from the Andover shop, and it was made out of that like hardcore, heavy as hell, bulletproof tweed,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
It was moss green, and it had a big, giant orange and red window pane on it, like
Ooh,
really,
Beautiful.
very, very like English, like duck shooting, and it weighed a ton and whatever. And I got it at a thrift store for a couple of bucks, and I was psyched, right? And the first time I had it on, I was walking in Harvard Square, and the same jacket was on the window display in the Andover shop.
that's
So somehow
great.
it wasn't even, it was like a current thing that they were selling, right? So whatever, that's not even the end of it. So I had it, and I wore it for a few years, and then when you're like this, you accumulate stuff, you purge stuff, you sell it, you donate it, it comes and it goes, and whatever. And somewhere along the way, I sold that jacket and like immediately regretted it, right?
Right.
And then like 6 months later, I was poking around eBay, and I not only found the same jacket, but the actual one that had belonged to me being resold by the guy that I sold it to, and bought it back from him for like $50 or something like
That's the
that.
circle of life right
Because I
there.
had regretted getting rid of it so much. So that was
From
like
whence you
one like
came.
ultra crazy thing. I mean, I don't know. I remember one time I found like I went into a thrift store, some suburb somewhere, and found this like whole stash of like Alpine German stuff, like one of those like Loudon capes, and like the hat with all the pins and the feathers on it, and
Oh
like
yeah.
the crazy suit that it's like almost like a Nehru jacket with the leaves, like a whole, some old guy from Austria had died, and like all his like Austria stuff was there. And I wound up selling it all in one lot somewhere, you know. And it's fun. That's the fun of it. Like that was some really cool, well made stuff that I was absolutely never going to wear, but it was just fun to like have found it and have had it for a while and moved it on to someone else,
Yeah.
and just to have been part of the lifespan of that thing,
Yeah, that the person, if you sold a whole lot of that to one person, that
Yeah,
person really enjoyed it. And like, I say often to people, there's a collector for fucking everything.
right. And that's the fun thing about selling stuff is like, I would I know that stuff was awesome, but I was totally never going to wear it. It's just not my thing.
100%.
I wouldn't have pulled it off. I didn't want to, but it doesn't mean that I appreciate it any less for what it is.
Totally.
So buying and selling stuff gives you the chance to play with these things that are maybe not necessarily for you, in a way that you couldn't if you were only shopping for yourself.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. And there's nothing like nothing better than like, I'll be doing a pop-up market and sell something to someone and they get so psyched on the thing, or they put it on immediately and are like walking out with it. It's like, yeah, I sell on eBay and Instagram and shit too, but like that little burst of serotonin that you get from
yeah.
knowing like I found this, 200 miles away from where I live in some godforsaken town, and this person is so stoked on
Oh, that's like so. For a while, when I had the little, my kids used to call it the secret store. because it was on the second floor in a building, and you'd never find it if I didn't put the sign out on the street. Um, I had found I found a suit, tails like white tie from like 1918 or something like
Oh
that, right?
man, yeah.
And it was the jacket and the pants, and it was made out of that like real thick flannel, and it's like the big thick like ribbed grosgrain silk on the lapels and everything. But of course, it was so old, it was like super tiny, right? But I bought it anyway because I found it somewhere and it was awesome, and I had it in the shop. And down the hall from where my place was, there was a yoga studio, and all the places on the second floor had a shared bathroom, right? So I had gone out to go to the bathroom, and I came back, and one of the people from the yoga studio, uh, this non-binary person who was a writer who had just had a book come out and was getting ready to do like the book release party, was standing in my place wearing this like super old 1920s tuxedo. Um, and because they had been born a small female person, it fit. You know what I mean? In a way
Yeah,
that it wasn't going to fit any guy.
that's awesome.
And it was like we hadn't even met, and then, oh, my name's Jade. I'm doing this book thing, and I got it, and so happy to find this crazy old tux. I was so happy to find someone to sell it to, because I thought I was never going to get rid of it, right? Um, and so I sold it to them, and they did the book party, and it was cool. And then the side effect of it was, for like a year after that, up until I closed the store, I was like the secret store for like non-binary people to
Oh
go buy
fuck
men's
yeah.
clothes. And
Fuck
so
yeah.
like, yeah, so I started like intentionally like picking up like small tuxedos that I might have passed on before, 'cause all of a sudden I had this market for the stuff, you know. But it was like a thing I never meant to happen, but just totally became a thing, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Um, and I was just like, sure, if this is like a thing, I'm into it. That's great, you know.
Totally, totally.
Um, yeah, and I remember I wrote, that was in the days when the old blog was going too. I had pictures of Jade wearing the tails, and I did a whole write up about how you know, Josephine Baker and Marlene Dietrich and all these like the idea of like a woman wearing a men's tailcoat in some sort of unusual setting is nothing new.
Nope.
You know what I
Nope.
mean? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
we'll have to pull that for sure.
Yeah, that is a true way to be an
it's on there
ally.
somewhere. Yeah, and I
There's a
was just
Josephine Baker mural in Baltimore, like right on one of the main roads.
cool. Was she from around there?
I believe she was from
I
Baltimore. I
think
believe
so.
she's from
Yeah,
West
yeah.
Baltimore. And Billie Holiday too.
But you know, that's something I never would have expected. It just happened,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
was like,
That's
you
the kind
know,
of serendipitous stuff that like I don't know.
yeah.
It's a core part of the thrift life.
Yeah, and even when I sold it, I was like, I gotta tell you, I was like, every bone in my body told me not to buy this thing, despite how awesome it was, because it was like a 27-inch waist and a size 34 chest. You know, like some teeny tiny guy in 1920s that was wearing this thing.
Right.
But it was just so awesome, I couldn't leave it behind. You know what I
I feel
mean?
it
Yeah,
entirely.
yeah. And it found a good home. You know.
It did. It did.
Yeah, and
Fuck.
not just on a hanger in someone's closet. Like it, you know, it got purchased, it got worn to some special event, which is what the thing was for in the first place anyway. You know,
Yeah.
that's cool.
I hope it's still hanging in their closet. Like,
Yeah,
you know, I'm sure that they remember the situation as much as you do.
or has moved on to its next rightful
Yeah,
owner.
100%.
You know, one or the other. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The circle of thrift life. Anyway, Joe, man, this has been fucking awesome.
For
Thank you.
sure.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. We always give our guests a chance to shout out themselves or whatever else they would like to. So have at it.
Oh, shout outs. Jeez, I don't know. I'm a homebody. I don't do much outside of the house. But you know what? I would give I mean, anybody I'm going to shout out is somebody you've already interviewed here anyway. You know,
Well,
my good buddy Zach, aka Leon Dad, aka used to be Newton Street Vintage.
oh yeah,
I
Mm,
give him a shout out. We talk all the time. We're still good buddies despite living on opposite ends of the country.
right.
Um,
Did you know him when he was in Boston, or did you guys meet online?
you know how we met is when I organized the first Top Shelf flea market. I, which I don't know if you guys ever heard of that or remember. Um, I used to organize these vintage flea markets back before that was really a thing too. And when I did the first one, I I advertised on the blog just looking for vendors. I was like, anybody wants to do this thing, get in touch. And he was one of the guys that got in touch with me. That's how we met. And
Oh, that's
yeah,
awesome.
we've been friends ever since. We worked together at Ralph Lauren for a while, in the flagship store in Boston. He actually got me that job. But yeah, it was just complete serendipitous thing. I
That's
was doing a flea market. He was reading my blog, and yeah, and we're good friends. Same thing with. I mean, there was some other guys like John Tinseth. I met through Affordable Wardrobe. We've been really good friends for years. ADG. Remember him?
oh yeah,
Dusty Granger, yeah, he's another friend of mine. He's kind of dropped off the scene a little bit, which is fine, but he's another good friend of mine that came to me by way of this whole crazy world
oh that's
and
great.
all. So yeah, it's been fun because the people I have met along the way have been good folks by and large.
Totally,
You know,
totally,
an asshole or two here and there, but that's kind of inevitable, I
for
guess.
sure,
So yeah.
for sure. And throw everyone, if they don't already follow you, your Instagram handle.
So my Instagram handle is an affordable wardrobe and period affordable period wardrobe. I think, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, an affordable wardrobe, just like it's always been.
Yeah, yeah.
Just
Um,
like it's always been. Hell
Highly
yeah.
recommend. Highly recommend.
yeah,
Yeah, because
yeah.
it's many, 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 many posts. The Blogspot one. I mean, it's like an insane time capsule into that period of
Well, I
our
used to
little
post on
scene.
that thing like 3-4 times a week. I was that's the funny thing too is the reason I didn't do it for so many years is what I liked most about the old blog was the writing. And because it was like I said earlier, it was more about writing than it is now. And then I didn't. I sort of like went dark for a while because writing wasn't where it was at anymore. And even if you look at the Instagram when I started, in the beginning, the posts were like one picture and a whole bunch of paragraphs until I realized that that's just not how Instagram works.
Sadly,
It's not,
yeah,
not what anyone's looking for. So,
yeah, yeah.
but we adapt. It's still fun.
We do adapt. Yeah, as
Yeah,
long as you're having fun,
yeah,
that's all that matters. But yeah,
cool.
so one more time, thank you, Joe. Everyone, thank you for listening. If you'd like to send us an email, it's apocalypseduds@gmail.com, at apocalypseduds on Instagram. And I am Matt Smith at Rebels Rogues.
And I am Connor Flower at Connor Flower.
And yeah, we'll catch you next week.
Thanks a lot, guys. Bye bye.
Take care.
Oh man, yeah. And I wanted to say, Mitch McConnell fell 2 times in the Senate very recently.
Did he?
Yeah.
Can I leave you with one thing about Mitch McConnell?
Yeah,
A
please
secret
do.
theory that I have. If you look at Mitch McConnell's suits, I think he wears Oxford.
Probably. Yeah.
OXX. Look at the lapels, and that's just me being a super dork. As much as I credit that guy with like 85% of the downfall of America, he does wear nice clothes, nicer than most
Well,
of the
when you
people.
are a human shaped like a turtle, you
Yeah.
have to conceal your body in a certain way, and
Yeah,
that's the Oxford cloth.
I don't think I've ever seen him in like the shitty dress sneakers that Kevin, whatever the fuck that asshole's
No,
name
dude, because
is.
Mitch McConnell is like propelled only by evil, and a soft soul is not evil at all.
True, true.
No, but I'm serious. The next time you see him on TV wearing a suit, look at the cut of the lapel of his jacket.
Yeah.
And then compare it to an Oxford suit. It's a very distinct lapel that they have.
It truly is. It truly is.
And you know how I figured that one out? Not to keep dragging it on. When it first occurred to me is I wrote a thing on Affordable Wardrobe when they made such a big stink about Barack Obama's tan suit. and I poked around the internet and found a picture of Mitch McConnell wearing a tan suit,
Oh yeah.
in July or something, because it was the summertime. And I was like, well, this guy's got a tan suit too. And that's when I first noticed it. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Nice. Yes. We will the tan suit day will live in infamy. Or
Yeah.
days probably.
Yeah. I feel like that should be get all the menswear guys together to protest by showing up in tan suits for something.
There you go. Solid idea. Let's
Have you
organize this.
considered the way that these tariffs will affect my clothing purchases? Golly.
God. Well, yeah, I better order some Wranglers now before they go into effect in Mexico, since that's where they make those.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, yeah, this has been hella fun, and we appreciate your time, Joe.
Yeah, thanks for having me,
Yeah,
guys.
man.
Take care, my friend.
Hey, have a good one.